Welcome to episode 4 of Cannabis Corner. A lot happened this past week, so I'm going to try to go through everything as quickly as possible. And I'm also considering moving this show over to Clubhouse. It's a live social audio platform where you can engage with the listeners. And so it's a little more interactive as opposed to just me talking in front of a screen, sharing my screen. So if anyone has any opinions on that, please let me know in the comments. And nothing is certain yet, so I might do next week on YouTube, but just keep an eye out. I'll post it on all my socials if there is going to be a change. Jumping right into this with some news that I was surprised to see, but Amazon endorsing federal cannabis legalization. So Republican Nancy Mace has introduced the States Reform Act, and Amazon has publicly come out and said that they are in support of it. So Amazon is saying that if cannabis were to be legal in the United States, it would open up their hiring pool by about 10%. Last June, Amazon said that they would no longer include cannabis in their comprehensive drug screening program for any jobs not regulated by the Department of Transportation. So I'm not exactly sure how cannabis legalization would increase the hiring pool by 10% for Amazon if they already are not testing for it. One of the pieces of this legislation is actually it's going to allow for interstate commerce, and it's going to let each state decide what they want to do. But broader bill is going to allow for interstate commerce. It's going to remove cannabis from as a Schedule 1 substance. It's going to have a low tax rate. And it's also going to allow for the import-export of cannabis products. The most high-quality cannabis is grown in the United States, so it makes it desirable to be exported to other countries. I'm not really buying the whole hiring pool thing. Amazon grew to be the company that it is now through distribution. They can't distribute cannabis currently. I think this is a distribution play. They want a slice of the pie here, in my opinion. So this is another article about the same thing from Forbes. This is Nancy Mace. She's also getting the support from Charles Koch, which I really don't understand this. He's a conservative guy. He made all his money from petroleum and its derivatives. Kind of confused about this one, but this seems to be the most business-friendly legalization effort or bill that I've seen put through. So hopefully this one gets more traction than the MORE Act and the Safe Banking Act and the States Act. None of them have had any success, so I hope this one does. Up next, we have some news out of my home state of Massachusetts, and the cannabis excise tax revenue exceeds alcohol for the first time. So in 2021, Massachusetts generated $51 million from excise tax of alcohol and $74 million from cannabis. So they crushed it. This is a couple weeks after the same thing just happened in Illinois. So if anything, this is going to be a domino effect for nearby states to say, hey, some of our citizens are driving into Massachusetts to buy their cannabis products. They're making the tax revenue from it when we could just legalize here and capture that tax revenue. Sticking with some news coming out of Massachusetts for this segment, Cannabis Committee advancing bill to pave way for social consumption sites in Massachusetts. So the Cannabis Control Commission, which governs cannabis industry in Massachusetts, has submitted a bill to the House that would do a few different things. It would put tighter restrictions on the legally required contracts between cannabis businesses and their host communities, because some sketchy stuff has happened with host communities in the past. It would establish a cannabis social equity trust fund, and it would also lay the groundwork for cities and towns to allow on-site cannabis consumption. So we're going to scroll down here a bit. This bill to talk about the Cannabis Social Equity Trust Fund for the purpose of making grants and loans, including no-interest loans and forgivable loans to social equity program participants and economic empowerment priority applicants, to encourage the full participation of entrepreneurs from communities that have been disproportionately harmed by cannabis prohibition and enforcement. So a couple weeks ago, CCC Chairman Stephen Hoffman pointed out that he's seen some predatory financing deals being offered to participants in the current social equity program. Based on the federal legal status of cannabis, no banks will touch any cannabis business. So you need to have millions of dollars up front to start any business to get the license approved. And so these social equity applicants typically have a very difficult time raising money if they don't have millions of dollars already, which the social equity applicants typically don't have. So this is cool that they're going to have a fund with $10 million in it to help these social equity applicants get through the process of actually opening up their facilities. There's also some stuff here towards the bottom where there's going to be they're also pulling out a new bill, S73, relative to the expungement of convictions of cannabis possession. So I haven't seen really any expungement effort in Massachusetts yet, so this would be great to see if this ends up happening. Sticking with the legalization effort for this segment, and we have Mississippi lawmakers finally agree on medical cannabis bill. So this was actually voted in and approved by the people of Mississippi in 2020. There was a small technicality in the way that their constitution was written. A mayor brought it up, and the state Supreme Court ends up overturning the vote because of this technicality. And so they've gone back and forth the past couple of years. Finally, they've all seemed to agree, and they're going to pass medical cannabis. So that's great, but they also have this gentleman, Alan Russell, serving life in prison because he had about an ounce of weed on him. And so this is an article from back in May, and the appeals court upheld his mandatory life sentence without parole. So he had 2 prior felonies, which made him a habitual offender in Mississippi. So this third strike, you're out, and now he's going to serve life in prison for having an ounce of weed on him. You know, this is a tricky situation because he had broken into a house on one instance and had a gun on him in another instance. So, you know, I don't agree that based on having 2 prior offenses, you have an ounce of weed on you, you get put away for life. I don't think that makes a lot of sense, especially considering now they're going to make cannabis legal. So I think it's kind of crazy that that's a factor that contributes towards him serving the rest of his life in prison. So I know Steve D'Angelo and Last Prisoner Project are talking a lot about this right now. I mean, the appeals court upheld the life sentence. I don't know if there's anything that can be done for Alan Russell besides like a presidential pardon. So we'll see what happens with this. But it doesn't seem like Mississippi is going to have the most equitable cannabis industry. From one ridiculous segment onto the next one, we have Minnesota groups, including Catholic Church, unite to oppose cannabis legalization. So there's been a new coalition that has formed in Minnesota called the Minnesotans Against Marijuana Legalization. One of the members of that association is the Minnesota Catholic Conference. So the representative from the Minnesota Catholic Conference is saying the bill that passed Minnesota House last session wasn't a justice bill, it was a marijuana commercialization bill. So as we've seen from other states that have opened up the doors for the industry, the promises made to justify legalization rarely come true, particularly for communities of color. So he thinks, screw it. The other states haven't done it right, so let's not do it at all. It seems like kind of a backwards opinion, in my personal opinion. But what's interesting here is that this is not the first time that the Catholic Church has opposed cannabis legalization. In Massachusetts, in 2016, we voted in adult use. And I didn't find this out until like last year, but the Catholic Church, the Archdiocese of Boston, was the second largest donor to the effort against legalization. They donated $850,000. And so they were saying that it leads to drug addiction and leads to heroin use and all these other things. And somewhere in this article, they say that the funds didn't come from any parishioner donations. I don't know where else, like the central ministry fund. I don't know what that is. I don't know how else the church makes money if it's not from people making donations. So that's kind of disappointing to see. I think the Catholic Church has a lot of other issues that they should be focusing on instead of trying to prevent cannabis legalization across the country. Moving on to a topic that we discussed last week as well, some better news compared to last week, but bipartisan Pennsylvania senators filed a bill to let medical cannabis patients grow their own plants, as opposed to states like New Jersey and South Dakota, who are doing the opposite. There also seems to be a lot of movement in other segments of the cannabis industry in Pennsylvania when it comes to expungement and also supporting small farms, because Pennsylvania is dominated by MSOs, the multi-state operators, the big cannabis companies in the United States. And so the politicians in Pennsylvania are starting to make more concerted effort to help out the little guy, essentially, which will be great to see if it actually comes to fruition. Here we have Thailand becoming the first Asian country to decriminalize recreational cannabis. So they're removing it from their list of controlled substances. They're going to allow their citizens to grow cannabis at home. You're just going to have to tell the government that you're planning to grow it. I guess they reserve the right to random inspections to make sure you're not growing too many plants or selling it commercially or anything like that. Another interesting thing is that they're not going to allow extracts. It's only going to be flower. So you can't turn it to oil. I'm assuming no edibles and things like that as well. So that's kind of an interesting little piece of this news. And this article mentions that they call it ganja in Thailand, locally known as ganja. So you might have noticed that I always kind of jump through hoops to not say the word marijuana. It's steeped in racial undertones and propaganda that I can make a separate video about in the future, but I prefer the term cannabis or really anything else besides the word marijuana. So ganja is a good one. Let's use ganja as opposed to marijuana. So we'll pivot from Thailand decriminalizing and allowing their citizens to grow cannabis to France, who on December 31st, French authorities banned CBD flower. 2 weeks later, the Supreme Court rules in favor of the CBD industry and lifts the ban. So there's some different states in the United States that have also banned smokable flower, and it doesn't really make any sense to me because as long as it's, there's some sort of regulation around it, it should be allowed. I mean, we allow people to smoke tobacco. And so I did a little extra digging. I was like, okay, so where is France in terms of global tobacco consumption? This is apparently a study from the World Health Organization. France is 19th overall in the world when it comes to tobacco consumption. Smokable hemp flower disrupts tobacco industries wherever it gets legalized. So in my opinion, I'm assuming that this is just big tobacco lobbying in France to say, hey, this stuff's bad. We shouldn't allow smokable hemp flower because it's going to hurt their bottom line. But thankfully, the Supreme Court ends up overturning it. So all is well in France. Moving on to some more news coming out of the scientific community around cannabinoids. Active component of cannabis could protect brain cells from diseases such as Parkinson's and Alzheimer's. So this is research published out of the Salk Institute, very reputable scientific institution out of California. And Pamela Meyer, a research professor and head of Salk's cellular neurobiology lab, said, we found that cannabinol, or CBN, protects neurons from oxidative stress and cell death. And oxidative stress is thought to be a leading cause of these neurodegenerative disorders. So she goes on to say that oxidative stress and cell death are two of the major contributors to Alzheimer's. This discovery could one day lead to the development of new therapeutics for treating this disease and other neurodegenerative disorders like Parkinson's. So just like with the COVID research and all these other scientific studies coming out about cannabinoids and their potential benefits, this research is very early, but it's incredibly promising. And so if cannabis stays as a Schedule I drug, it makes this type of research very difficult as we loosen regulations around cannabis and make it more available. This type of research is going to be more popular or more common. There's going to be more funding for it, and we're most likely going to find many new therapies for a lot of different medical conditions that might not have a lot of treatment options for them now. Moving on to an article about my favorite governor, Pete Ricketts. Nebraska is one of the last states to come. I think they're actually the last state to set up a hemp commission because Idaho just set theirs up. So Nebraska is the last one to come to the table to start setting up a hemp industry in their state when they're one of the biggest agricultural contributors in the United States. So kind of weird to me, but the reason I say that about Pete Ricketts is because a handful of months back, he said that legalizing cannabis would kill your kids, like quoted saying that. So this guy's kind of a whack job if you ask me, but he's finally making moves to set up the Nebraska Hemp Commission. And the major economic driver in Nebraska is agriculture, and I think they can contribute significantly to the US-based hemp industry on the industrial side of things. So looking forward to seeing how this develops, and hopefully they can get this up and running very quickly. Staying on the topic of industrial hemp, we have some interesting news, and with this company Heartland and Revago leveraging engineered hemp additives for next-gen plastic resins. So these two companies have formed a joint development agreement to create what is said will be the next generation of polymer resins. They're saying that the carbon negative and renewable plastic additives will reduce the carbon footprint of plastics manufacturers while producing composite products that are stronger, lighter, cheaper, and more sustainable. The one thing I want to say here, I think we have to be careful with the carbon negative wording here because, yeah, maybe the cultivation of the hemp might be carbon negative, but every aspect of the supply chain after that is likely contributing carbon to the environment. So I don't think we can just say that these products are going to be carbon negative because they most likely won't be. Definitely more responsibly made, but I think we should just be careful with that. Revago is one of the largest plastic recyclers, compounders, and distributors, saying that they have over 50,000 customers all over the country. And Heartland is a biotech company that's engineering the hemp fibers for the additives. And so they're going to be working together, and Heartland is saying that it will be able to process more than 100 million pounds of hemp additives that will be available for plastic compounding. That's a lot of hemp. I don't know where they're getting all that hemp from. They seem to be confident that they're going to have that supply. So I'm assuming they've talked to farmers. Hopefully they have contracts set up for that much acreage already. We'll see how this plays out. I am optimistic that we're going to start seeing a lot more hemp plastic. If you just Google like Legos hemp, Legos has made a commitment to, I think it's like by 2030, have 100% of their Lego pieces made out of hemp plastic. So maybe they had already been talking to Revago. They knew this was in the works. So looks like we're going to see a lot more hemp plastic in the future. In this segment here, we have IND Hemp, based out of Montana, is looking for more growers. So they are a hemp processing facility, one of the biggest in the country, and they're looking to expand and contract more acreage for this 2022 upcoming season. So maybe IND Hemp's contracts and their own acreage might contribute to those hemp plastics. We'll see what happens. But IND Hemp is, they're working with these farmers as well. So they have their own acreage, but they're trying to contract more. They're consulting. So they're making sure the right seed is provided and the right agronomy practices are utilized based on each individual farm's situation. So I think they're making a big difference up in Montana and the surrounding states with really increasing the amount of hemp that's being grown in that area of the country. So I definitely support what IND Hemp is doing, and I look forward to seeing them continue to grow as one of the leading processors in the country. So the final topic that I'll talk about in terms of industrial hemp is this news coming out from the USDA. Their Agricultural Research Service has started the nation's first National Hemp Webinar series. So this is the first government-sponsored educational platform, to my understanding, that has been put forth to support knowledge around industrial hemp. And so if you're interested in learning more about the industry from industry experts, you don't want to just watch my videos about the news, you can come here. You do have to register, but the first one just happened the other day, February 9th. Dr. Bruce Bugbee is going to be talking about indoor cultivation. You can see all these other experts here talking about different parts of the industry. So it seems like a really cool opportunity to learn directly from some of these industry leaders. So last week, I spoke about a couple different sneakers that Nike's making, an Air Max 95 and a hemp blazer. A couple days after I filmed that episode, I saw the news that Nike's also doing this kids Air Force One. So this is a much more colorful version, but it's that same like 100% hemp woven design that they have on the blazer. And so I haven't seen any release date for these, but if I did, or if I had more viewership on this channel, I might not be talking about this because I'm kind of afraid. I want to make sure that I'm able to get the blazers. And I'm not sure if it's going to be limited edition or not. So Nike's making some moves, like I talked about last week, including hemp on the branding. Seems like they're putting more of an emphasis on this lately. I hope they continue to do this. I don't really support any Nike products. I don't buy Nike products anymore, except when they make shoes out of hemp. That's kind of the soft spot that they're going to keep getting me every time they make a cool shoe out of hemp. Not these specifically, but the blazers that I talked about last week. Big fan of those. And so the last topic for today's video, we have Crypto Cannabis Club launch their cannabis brand and loyalty program for their NFT owners. So again, it's kind of a recurring topic here has been the conversion of Web3 and the cannabis industry. And the Crypto Cannabis Club launched a flower product that's going to be available in California. It's going to be available to everyone. The holders of this NFT project are going to have a discount on the flower, and it's in partnership with Camp Nova, a distribution platform in California. They've also partnered with a well-known brand, Old Pal, to give discounts on their flower, and then different accessories companies like Dr. Dabber, King Palm, with like for pre-rolls, Higher Standards Papers, Vibes Papers, Marley Naturals. These are actually partnered, these are brands owned by Green Lane Packaging, essentially a company that just acquired the company I used to work for. It's kind of interesting to see that. But there's a handful of NFT or Web3 projects focused towards cannabis industry, but it seems like Crypto Cannabis Club is leading the way in terms of actually making moves and in establishing partnerships and really driving value to their community. So this is cool to see. If you're into NFTs and you're in California and you smoke a lot of weed, it might make sense for you to pick one of these up because you might be able to save a lot of money on some of your purchases. All right, so that wraps up episode 4 of Cannabis Corner. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did like it, please like the video. Subscribe to the channel if you aren't already. That would really help me out. And, well, actually, I don't know, because this might be moving over to Clubhouse. I might never post on YouTube again. Who knows? If you have any opinion on that, let me know. If you've never used Clubhouse, maybe download it. Seems like an interesting platform. Live social audio is getting really popular now with Twitter Spaces and Clubhouse. So it's more interactive. I think it might be more entertaining for people to actually engage in conversation and like share your opinion after I talk about an article. What do I know? I don't really know anything. I'm just trying different things. So share your opinion with me, please. And I will talk to you soon.